Welcome back to College Football Addiction. TJ Pittenger here with Drake C. Toll, Locked On Big 12. Let's talk a little bit about the SEC, Drake. Is the conference dying? Well, what's the ESPN freakout meter right now, 1 to 10? Let's talk a little bit about this.
The SEC is dead. That's it. I mean, you could turn on SEC shorts, which is hilarious. By the way, I grew up an Arkansas fan, like born and raised in Valonia, Arkansas. Love the Hogs, love the SEC. I've been there. I've been to the games. I've screamed when A&M first came to the conference. I went to that game that they played at Arlington, and it was Ryan Tannehill versus I think Tyler Wilson, and I remember chanting SEC as Arkansas beat A&M. And now, what used to be like a fun, like, oh, the SEC is good and we win a lot. Now it's gone. Like the luster of that conference being number one in college football is gone. And the second that everybody could pay players, and the second that we started evening out college football through NIL and revenue sharing and these new big ideas and realignment expansion brought Texas and Oklahoma that turned out to not be that good of additions to that conference, the SEC went away. And maybe the biggest piece of that, too, and here's why the ESPN freakout meter should be very high. 2 straight years without an SEC team in the college football playoff national championship. They won't win it again now consecutively for the first time since like 2005-ish. And why ESPN is freaking out is because they just dropped a load of money on the SEC. This was going to be their product. Oh, we got it from CBS. Now, we've got the best conference in college football, and we'll bring Paul Feinbaum and Kirk Herbstreit. We're going to make sure that Nick Saban's on that set, and Pat McAfee. We talk about the SEC and the South and how that's the best place. That's the best place you could possibly watch college football, the best conference for college football. And then what happened? In the same way that ESPN killed off the NBA. We don't watch the NBA anymore. In the same way that ESPN killed off the MLB. I'm not turning on the MLB on Sunday nights. In the same way that ESPN has not promoted hockey despite a massive contract to bring the NHL in, we're seeing record lows in viewership for these sports the second that ESPN gets its hands on them. And the SEC is going through the same thing right now. ESPN's once again looking around the room going, well, none of our programs are working right now. No one's watching First Take. I didn't even know PTI was still a thing. And our major product, the one thing we can hang our hats on, the SEC, is underperforming. Joel Klatt said it with Fox. He said the narrative of the SEC is king is dead. And that is exactly spot on. What was once this power conference and proved it with a CBS contract is now flailing.
Yeah, the idea that past performance means anything right now is also pretty hilarious, right? The first comment that we'll get on this video will absolutely be about, oh, we've won X number of this.
You think
we haven't won anything, right?
You think we'll get comments on this video?
1 or 2. I think that the narrative, though, oh, we won X number in 20 years. We did this. Sure, that's great. No one denied 5 years ago where the SEC standing was. No one denied that the SEC had the elite premier programs, especially when teams that are in the championship now, like Notre Dame and Ohio State, weren't living up to expectations, especially when teams like Michigan last year weren't living up to expectations. But now you've had a couple straight years of this. Alabama gets in the most controversial play. The SEC really shouldn't even have had a team in last year. And then this year, they completely underwhelmed. All 3 of their teams losing by double digits when they took their exits. And you've got a balancing out, and maybe not even a balancing out. Like, is the Big Ten the best conference now? Is it even a question?
It's not a question at all. I mean, the 2 of their teams win the national championship. Notre Dame is an effective Big Ten team, and they have been for the last 10 years. We've considered them that in auxiliary sports, ACC for sure, but they've always aligned with that Big Ten brand in football. So it feels like 2 Big Ten squads are going to meet in the national championship in Atlanta. And I'll go back, like SEC Shorts is posting about how, the SEC needs, it could be dead, and they've missed the college football playoff championship for 2 years in a row. And then Greg Sankey comes out and says, well, we love being the underdog. We've always embraced being the underdog. No, Greg, you've never been you've never acted like the underdog. Why are you saying this now? And you turn on Feinbaum and everybody, there are so many fires to be put out right now because the SEC is underwhelming. And in a down year for the Big Ten, okay, in a down, remember that first year of the college football playoff, 2014, that wasn't a massive year for the Big Ten conference. They were like, oh shoot, going into the playoff era, we barely sneak in Ohio State. Many thought that like Baylor or TCU should have gotten that spot. Instead, And then the Buckeyes go win the championship. Nobody freaked out. Everything's good because conferences ebb and flow, up years, down years. Nobody's britches are bigger than somebody else's.
I'll get right back to chatting with Drake, but first I do want to tell you about our friends over at BetUS. Make sure you're using our code YouTube150 for a 150% sign-up bonus all the way through the NFL playoffs. We've got March Madness coming up here in a couple of months. Whatever you're betting on, make sure you're betting with BetUS. YouTube 150 gets you 150% on your first bonus, 125% on your next two, all of that up to $2,000. Make sure BetUS is who you're betting with today.
Except for the SEC. And when you start to spew that narrative of, well, we deserve 4 automatic bids every year, when the SEC starts saying that preseason and then puts this product together, when a Big 12 team wins the SEC in the regular season, goes further than any other SEC school in the college football playoff, that's when you know things probably aren't as healthy as they wanted you to think they were 5 months ago, spewing all this propaganda, or even a month ago, skewing propaganda going into the college football playoff. You lost to Notre Dame. You should have lost 3 key calls that were, come to review, bad. Lost Arizona State a game against Texas. I mean, you didn't perform in the college football playoff. Alabama loses its bowl game to Michigan. South Carolina loses to Illinois. And the SEC wants to tout itself as a conference that needed 4 in this year. At this point, I know it sounds very subjective. I'm the Big 12 guy. But truly, the SEC is not what it was 5 years ago. It's not what it was in 2011. At this point, red button, college football is evening itself out, whether SEC fans like it or not.
Yeah, there certainly does seem to be a playing field leveling. You mentioned the playoff itself, right? They went 2-3 in the playoff, and no disrespect to Clemson or Arizona State, their 2 wins were probably the 2 of the most underwhelming wins by a favorite, a double-digit favorite in both games. Yeah. They needed double overtime in one of them, and they needed a goal line stand in the other one to keep Clemson from coming back. And that's no shot at Clemson and Arizona State, 2 teams that got in because of auto bids, 2 teams that were voted outside of the top 12, if I could get the words out. Yeah. And so their 2 wins maybe have a little bit of an asterisk by them anyway. They're 2 kind of, if you don't win either one of those, we're sitting around firing even bigger panic buttons. But when they got matched up with even teams, you remember the first round? Remember the narrative? We might get 3 blowouts, but at least the Tennessee-Ohio State game will be good. We know that Georgia's got a down a quarterback, but we still like them as a slight favorite against Notre Dame. And they got embarrassed in every game. Ohio State, if they wouldn't have stopped shooting themselves in the foot with penalties and drops, they'd have blown Texas out when they played in Texas. Yep. And so, yeah, I don't even, what do they have left to hang their hat on? The most draft picks, having the most guys go to the league next month and in the next couple months?
I forgot that Tennessee made the college football playoff until you just said that. And the reason I forgot is because they got beaten into absolute submission against Ohio State. The same Ohio State that SEC fans want to tell you has underwhelmed. It's always crazy how the narratives start. As, yeah, well, Notre Dame, I remember when they lost to Alabama that one year, and Ohio State, they always find a way, Ryan Day, to choke there at the very end. And then the SEC team loses to that same team that they were undervaluing the week prior. And you'll never hear foot in mouth or eat crow. It's always woe is me. I'm the underdog now, and everybody's going to love me because we embrace that mentality. So what do you have to hang your hat on? You have Nick Saban on College Game Day giving the stat about draft picks. You have, 4 LSU quarterbacks are currently X, Y, and Z, top 10 in passing touchdowns in the NFL. And, yeah, cool, I guess. I mean, we could talk the Heisman Trophy winner from the Big 12, the Blitnikoff winner from the Big 12. I mean, you start talking about the national championship from the Big 10, and you go to the ACC, and there is still solid competition at the top end of the ACC, whereas SEC schools are getting blown out or losing bowl games against teams that they once said were these pitiful members of college football. And it's just their narrative is no longer stacking up. What do they have there to hang their hat on? 3 letters that they think are worth a lot, and they're just not. The product is not there right now.
The rest of college football seems to have caught up somewhat, maybe even passed in certain regards. And, it's not to say the SEC will never win a championship again or anything like that. Like, there certainly will be ebbs and flows within this sport. But just this stranglehold that they've had on championships in college football seems to have been relinquished. And I don't know if we won't, because unless a new Nick Saban arises, I don't know that we'll ever see what we saw from a very impressive dominant standpoint. There's no denying that. Nobody in here is saying, oh man, it wasn't impressive what they did for a 15-year run. But I just don't know that we'll ever see that again.
I don't think so. And for SEC fans, you're right. This doesn't. 07 Florida was great, right? Or 2011 LSU Alabama or 2009 Bama. We can go through 2019 LSU. Those are great. Those are also 5, 10, 15 years ago, but that's not today. Maybe you were the best for a long time. I'll give it to you. I'll wave the white flag there. But today, you're not anymore.
Yeah, going back to the past is almost a Miami Hurricanes mantra of trying to prove how good you are today. So Drake, where can people follow you? Where can they find more of your content?
Yeah, at LO Big 12 or at Drake C. Toll on Twitter and wherever you find your podcasts, and on YouTube with Locked On Big 12.
Appreciate you, man.
Always fun.
Appreciate Drake C. Toll for joining me. Locked On Big 12. Make sure you go check out his content. We'll link it all down in the description. Appreciate BetUS for their support as well. If you felt any type of way about this content, you loved it, hated it, couldn't stand it, or want more, make sure that you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of college football addiction.